It's time to talk New York Giants football post NFL draft with Ryan Dunleavy of the New York Post. Ryan, good to have you back.
What's up? How are you?
I'm going all right. It's busy, but I know just by seeing you at Aaron Rodgers' press conference, getting a chance to ask the big man a question yourself, you're all over the place.
Yeah. I've been Aaron Rodgers, the draft. Now I'm doing 2024 draft. I've had a couple baseball games, some Nets playoff games. It's a busy time in New York, but it sure beats the last whatever 5, 10 years where New York sports, all the teams were losers. Basically, it's nice to be in an energized sports town again.
That's right. And football season is going to be some season, that's for sure. That's going to be wow. Can't wait. But now it's about the draft. We'll have time to settle in and recap the entire offseason in a couple of months and prepare for the 2023 season. But at this point, we're pretty much 95% done with personnel, barring injuries, things of that nature. Before we just get into the draft, how do you think the Giants handled their offseason?
The offseason as a whole.
Yes, as a whole.
Well, I mean, they overpaid Daniel Jones. So they were in the spot that you don't want to be in where you don't know if your quarterback's worth it, but top money, but you know that he's better than most of the alternatives. So you end up paying $40 million a year for a guy who's not worth $40 million a year, but you could end up with somebody who you could end up with a Zach Wilson or Marcus Mariota or somebody, and then you're in hell. So they had to do it. They're on bad terms with Saquon Barkley because they franchise tagged him, and he wants a contract extension, but they offered him a fair one, and he turned it down. So that's as much on his agent for misreading the market as it is on them. Dexter Lawrence isn't at OTAs because he wants a contract. So they still have a lot to do contract-wise with Saquon and Dexter Lawrence. Free agency, they made some smart one-year additions. They didn't break the bank. And then I thought they had an excellent draft. So I would say they did what they had to do. I don't know that they got much better until this weekend when I thought they got much better.
Okay, so Dexter, now we know with Saquon, so whether he gets a new contract or not, he's going to play. That's just the way that the tag goes, and we know how normally if you get tagged 90%, 80%, I would like to know the numbers, but it feels like 80 to 90% of the time those players move on somewhere else. But about Lawrence, could that be a distraction? Could that be something that actually could interfere with the season?
No, because he's actually on contract.
Okay.
Where Saquon can hold out because he has an unsigned franchise tag, Dexter Lawrence really can't hold out. They've done the CBA for the NFL has made it almost impossible to hold out. So Dexter Lawrence actually has a signed contract. He's not a free agent. He has the 5th-year franchise tag, the 5th-year option. So he's got to show up, I don't know, 6 days into training camp. And he's not the kind of guy who is going to make a distraction. He's a, pretty team-oriented guy. He actually has the Giants logo tattooed on his arm. Plus, to be honest, I'm not confident they will get a deal done with Saquon. I'm pretty confident they'll get one done with Dex, just based on it's so obvious what the contract needs to be. There's been, whether Javon Hargrave or Deron Payne or Jeffrey Simmons, we've seen 3 defensive tackle extensions of like 4 years and about $22 to $23 million. That's what Dexter Lawrence has to be. That's what Quinnen Williams has to be for the Jets. So I don't really understand what they're haggling over. I guess the guarantees or the schedule of payouts or whatever, but we know it has to be a 4-year deal worth about $90 million.
So, and you're saying that Saquon, there's still a possibility that he could hold out.
Oh yeah, I think he'll play the games, but I wouldn't surprise me if he skips the start of training camp. He has an unsigned contract, so he can do whatever he wants as far as that. And they have the right to pull the franchise tag if they want to. I don't think they would because he's still their best player. But yeah, I mean, I don't think he'll miss games because that's when it becomes about team and teammates, and he loves his teammates and he loves winning. But as long as it's about the business side, and that's really what practice is, I think he won't be there without a new deal.
Okay. I mean, there's no reason not to sign the tag, though, right before the season begins.
The reason is because you want a new deal. Once you sign the tag, you lose all your leverage.
But it's just for 1 year, though, right?
What do you mean?
I mean, you're only signing the tag for a year or so.
Sure. Once you sign the tag, what incentive do the Giants have to give you a 3-year deal when you've already signed a 1-year deal?
Okay.
So he's gonna not his leverage is to not sign it. So once he signs it, they're not gonna pay him more than they. Once he signs the 1-year tag, they're gonna say, okay, that's what you're paying
So
for this year.
negotiations are then off until season
Correct.
ends.
So
Okay.
why would he sign it? Yeah.
All right, so we'll see how that goes now, and we'll get into because we don't look. We don't have to go in order, so I'm going to kind of go all over the place, and let's just talk about how big then or how key was for the Giants to be able to pick up Eric Gray in the 5th round. When we're talking about obviously the draft, because there were a few running backs, as always is going to be the case in a draft, that will wind up being available. When you shake your head, and you go, "Wow." Eric Gray is still available in the 5th round. This guy could have gone in the 3rd round. This guy had that much talent. So Giants had to feel pretty fortunate to get a kid like that because they didn't have that type of talent last year, or really the last couple of years without Barkley. So now they have somebody that they hopefully will be able to, plug into the lineup in case anything happens to Saquon.
That's exactly the thinking. Yeah. I don't know that he's a great compliment to Saquon. People have tried, from what I've gathered on Eric Gray, is he's more of a chunk yardage runner, which is kind of what Saquon is. He's not really a between the tackles runner, Gray. So I don't think he's this great. Like, okay, on 3rd and 2, you take out Saquon and put in Eric Gray to get the first down. That's not really what he is. I think he's more of a to spell Saquon guy. And Saquon's had, I don't know, played like 82, 83% of the snaps when healthy. So that's too many. So it's a good way to spell Saquon. And yeah, if he's injured, which he's been a couple years in his career, or if he's not available for business reasons, then yeah, you have Eric Gray. But let's be honest. Let's call this exactly what it is. Eric Gray is not Saquon Barkley.
Sure.
You are falling. I hate the narrative that running back, oh, you can just plug in a running back. Look at Isaiah Pacheco. Look what he did for the Chiefs. He was as good as Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Yeah, they have Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce. So, yes, you can plug in a 7th-round running back, and he can be good on the Chiefs. This is not that. Say the Giants need their running back to be their best player. Eric Gray is not ready to be their best player. He's still a long way from Saquon Barkley.
This is a good time to plug the Our Lads draft guide because it's not late. This is actually the perfect time if you haven't already picked one up, because now you know where all the players go. And you can check out all the Giants scouting reports on all these players. Matter of fact, taking a look at Eric Gray, some of the notes, the scouting notes, talked about his tremendous physical profile, talked about how he could fit into any running scheme, but it does say that he can be suited as a between the tackles rusher. So, like
that's
you
not
said,
what I heard, but that's interesting.
Yeah, not he can fit anywhere. Not like he is definitely like he's the type of running back that you just want to hammer the ball through the line of scrimmage and play power football. But it does seem to feel this particular scouting report that he can rush between the tackles if necessary, and so that works out well. Also talks about how that he can truly maximize the plus burst, balance, and strength of his game if he does rush between the tackles. What really separates him, though, I think, from a lot of other running backs, especially being able to get him later in the draft, is because he has elite hands. He is one of those running backs that catches the ball like wide receiver. So that is going to be big. That's the type of guy that you want to be able to bring in, especially if you want to sit Saquon, for specific stretches. And we know the NFL and the passing game. So that's, I think, really what separates Gray from some of these other running backs.
What I think is interesting is the Giants have really never been able to maximize Saquon Barkley as a passing threat through 3 different offensive coordinators. Maybe that's because Saquon's been oversold as a passing threat. or maybe that's because the schemes haven't really figured it out. I've always blamed it on the scheme. So Gray, if he's as good a pass catcher as that scouting report says, and as I've heard from scouts, then we'll see if it's that Saquon's pass catching has been a bit overblown during his career, because I've always been waiting for him to be that Alvin Kamara type threat, and it really has never happened as far as pass catching. I can think of a couple big plays he's made as a pass catcher, but most of Saquon's highlights are taking a carry, bouncing it to where there shouldn't be a hole, and all of a sudden making something out of nothing, Barry Sanders like.
All right, let's talk about some other skill positions, especially the wide receiver department, because that was the biggest weakness, one of the biggest weaknesses of the team in general. Guys that outside of New York or following the Giants had no idea who these receivers were. They were catching balls and scoring touchdowns. But now you got Paris Campbell coming in from the Colts in free agency. Hopefully, Wanda Robinson stays healthy from last year's draft. Obviously, the same thing for Sterling Shepard. And then the opportunity to take Jalen Hyatt, a receiver that could very well have gone late in the first, second round. Giants get him in the third. Pretty much you're talking about a guy that at this point is a one-trick pony, but that's fine. He's got elite speed. He's got the type of speed that's going to open up the rest of the playing field, and he's going to give the Giants the type of deep threat that they haven't had just yet, at least in a few years.
Yeah, if you're going to be a one-trick pony, the trick you want to have is speed. That's the Giants recognized very much last year that they were one of the slower teams in the NFL, whether it was Campbell or Hyatt, or on defense, they added some speed. They wanted to Okereke's fast as far as linebackers go. Banks is obviously a burner, their first round pick. They wanted to improve their team speed. So back to Hyatt. Yeah, I read Peter King this morning on NBC, said that the Raiders had him as one of their top 2 or 3 prospects available at the end of the first round. So that shows you it wasn't just other teams, it was other teams valued him too, and the Giants got him at 73. So he was a possible first round pick for the Raiders and for a couple other teams. Really, what the Giants did was they got guys who could have been their first round pick. They got them at 24, 57, and 73. They got 3 guys who, if they picked them at 25, you wouldn't have thought that was crazy.
Yep. Hyatt winning the Bolitnikoff last year. Had a breakout campaign, really was somebody that, and this happens a lot in college football, especially if you get the right quarterback in place, the right coach, the system, everything just was green lit last year for a big year for Hyatt with Hendon Hooker as the quarterback for most of the season. So he had a big year, 15 touchdowns, so that's huge. And again, there's a lot to work with there, though. So there's still somebody that you look and you go, like you said, all right, nothing bad about having just that one ability, but who's to say that he can't be better than that? Who's to say that he can't refine his route running? Who's to say that he can't become a little bit more of a complete package than just, maybe a number 3 that tops the ball off and becomes the deep threat. So that's something that, again, will only impact the Giants in time. And when you have the right coaching staff, like we saw last year with the development of Daniel Jones, anything's possible with the development of Jalen Hyatt as well, because that's still what the Giants need. Because at this point in time, who would you consider the Giants' number 1 wide receiver?
They don't have one. Maybe Darius Slayton, maybe Isaiah Hodgins. They have a bunch of 2s and 3s. And so the idea is that from game to game, it'll be a different number 1 receiver, which in theory sounds great until it's 24-24, or excuse me, you're losing 28-24 with a minute and a half to go and you have to feed someone the ball. That's when it's like, oh, well, yeah, it'd be nice to have a guy we knew. Be nice to have a guy we could force the ball to. But the theory here is like one game it's Paris Campbell, one game it's Isaiah Hodgins, one game it's Jalen Hyatt. That's how it's been with the Giants for the last 3 or 4 years. It hasn't sounded great, but at least the 5 guys this year should be better than the 5 guys last year or the year before.
And you know what? I want to keep an eye, too, on one of their free agents that they picked up after the draft at wide receiver, and that's the kid Bryce Ford Wheaton from West Virginia. Our lads had him as high as a 5th-round grade. Gives the Giants something they really don't have, and that is somebody with a big frame at 6'3", 222, And as our lad says, he has the tools to be a matchup nightmare at the next level. So anytime you get a guy like that, and you don't have to spend a draft pick on him. That's a free. It's a free deal. You hope that it pays off. It does happen. Usually every team lands one of these guys a year, an undrafted free agent that sticks on the team. And with this wide receiver unit, I know it's a little deeper now, though, than it was last year, but still, he might have a chance.
It's deeper, but they're injury guys. I mean, let's go. Paris Campbell's always hurt. Sterling Shepard's always hurt. Wandale Robinson was hurt his rookie year. Darius Slayton's missed 2 or 3 games a year. I mean, it's deeper, but it's deep with guys who are often injured.
And matter of fact, it actually says here at the very bottom of his report, an ideal fit for a team looking to bolster the size and strength to the receiver room. And he will also be an effective gunner as well. All right, so that's wide receiver, but we also have to talk about tight end because of the free agent pickup of Darren Waller and the trade with Las Vegas. He's got to stay healthy. Had his first injury-plagued season last season, but we all know what kind of a talent he was heading into the last year and a half. So what about Darren Waller?
Yeah, I think you nailed it. I mean, another guy like Paris Campbell or all the guys we just rattled off. If he's healthy, he should be dynamic, but he's obviously was available because he had some injury problems and the Raiders felt he had some attitude problems. So, if the Giants have him in the right frame of mind and the right body, then they got to steal. I mean, is what it is. People always say, are the Giants trying to build Brian Daboll's Buffalo offense? Right now, it feels to me like they're trying to recreate a poor man's version of Mike Kafka's Chiefs offense. Because what do they have? Probably, when healthy, the second best tight end in the league to Travis Kelce is Darren Waller, and a bunch of small, shifty slot receivers. None obviously as good as Tyreek Hill, but certainly as good as Mecole Hardman and Juju Smith-Schuster or any of the other guys that Mahomes is thrown to, are Paris Campbell and Sterling Shepard and Wandale Robinson and Jalen Hyatt. A bunch of short, shifty speed guy burners and a dynamic tight end over the middle. That's what a poor man's version of the Chiefs offense is what it feels like the Giants are building.
And a couple of other guys to keep an eye on battling at training camp will be a couple of former Jets, Jeff Smith and Jamison Crowder. Again, just adding depth, especially Crowder, to the lineup. But again, the same physical stature of some of these other guys that are already there.
Crowder's the slot receiver. Yep. It is what you. Yep.
All right. Before we move on to defense, a big get for the Giants, and that's the center position. The Jets also went center. It's interesting because I think just about any scouting service would have said that Schmitz would have been number 1 or Tittman would have been number 1. Fact is, Jets Giants got them both. But for the Giants' sake, of course, that's what the show is about. Schmitz, who was the Yarlad's number 1 rated center, goes to the Giants, a 4-year starter. And this is one of those guys that's, of course, Minnesota. If all you have to do is turn on tape with their season last season. And as you know, it's just run, and run some more. And that's really where his game specializes in at this point, which a lot of people feel that will be the reason where, his intelligence and all that kind of stuff. He's not a big-time athlete, but a lot of those other things that are very important as far as handling the line of scrimmage and such should immediately make him a day 1 starter.
Yes, he's looked at as a plug-and-play starter at a position the Giants needed a plug-and-play starter. You don't want to play poker with Joe Shane because he certainly made it sound in the weeks leading up to the draft like he was fine with using Ben Bredesen or Shane Lemieux, two current guards, and having them learn center. He made that seem like that was going to be no big deal, and in reality, he drafted a center because he wanted a center. So, certainly seems like Schmitz is the plug-and-play guy after the Giants lost John Feliciano, who was last year's starter, and Nick Gates, who was the previous year's starter. It'll be the 4th different starting center in 4 years for Daniel Jones, but Schmitz should be the long-term starting center. Like you said, guy who plays nasty and a guy who plays smart. So Not a Probably not a great athlete, but he's already 24 years old. He should be adjusted to the man strength that he's going to face in the NFL. He certainly has that at 24 and playing in the Big Ten. So I thought it was pretty neat. Like you said, the Jets got their number one ranked center because obviously they picked the first center. So they got their number one ranked center. And I strongly believe Schmitz was the Giants' number one ranked center. So both teams got their top center to come to New York.
Before we move on, and we'll talk a lot more about this during training camp because this is going to be one of the bigger stories, I would believe, and that's the competition at the guard spots. A quick question: the kid, the draft pick last year, the third round pick, Azuda. Uh, any update on his injured neck?
No, I haven't heard anything. I'll be interested. He'll be one of the injured guys I'm looking forward to seeing on the field, assuming he's out there when OTAs start. But I haven't heard anything, which usually is probably a good sign because if it was serious or something, that probably would have leaked by now. But no, I expect he'll be in the mix there at guard. I mean, they're gonna start Mark Lewinsky because they pay him a lot of money. So they're even though he had a disappointing season last year, he'll start at one guard, and the other guard will be a battle between Azudu, Shane Lemieux, Ben Bredesen, and Marcus McKeithen.
And of course, the entire offensive line is probably going to be dictated positively or negatively on the development of Evan Neal. So
That's it.
yeah.
You nailed it. You hit it on the head. Andrew Thomas is a legit Pro Bowl, All Pro, stud left tackle, but Evan Neal has to play like a top 10 pick. If he last year he played like a bottom caliber starter in the NFL, he has to be much much better than that, which Andrew Thomas did. He took a huge jump from his rookie year to his sophomore year in the NFL, but just because one guy did it doesn't mean the other guy's going to do it. So a lot rides on Evan Neal.
All right, and then as we switch over to defense, between free agency and the draft, a minimum it looks like of three new starters. Bobby Okereke in free agency, of course, as well as Bobby McCain. And then the number one draft pick, Deonte Banks. And I tell you what, going through these corners, and we even saw it in the draft. I think most people were starting to get an opinion that Gonzalez was going to be the number one corner. And all of a sudden, Witherspoon gets drafted a lot earlier than people thought. And maybe not a lot, a few picks, maybe 3 or 4 earlier than he thought. And then Gonzalez slips all the way to the Patriots, and then everything was still up in the air after that because most people had Witherspoon and Gonzalez 1, 2. But from 3 to like 8, nobody had any idea. But Banks was definitely a player that you can envision as the third best corner in the draft.
Well, the Commanders threw the huge curveball, right? At 16 they passed on Christian Gonzalez and they took 165-pound ball hawk Emmanuel Forbes. So that was the huge that was the huge curveball that made the Patriots trade that screwed the Jets out of Broderick Jones. It made the Patriots look even smarter when the Commanders took Forbes over Christian Gonzalez. So Christian Gonzalez fell to the Patriots at 17. It was the typical Patriots good fortune kind of move. And then so the Giants there at 17, they got their 7 or 8 picks away, and they can't be thinking Deonte Banks is going to fall. And they know they're picking either corner or receiver. There was a report today from The Athletic that they were trying to trade up for Zay Flowers. All 4 receivers go 20, 21, 22, 23. 4 receivers in a row, the first 4 receivers. So then they're starting to get tense because now they know their top 3 corners are gone and the top 4 receivers are gone. That really just leaves them with Deonte Banks as a top 4 option at either position. So they end up trading up 1 pick to get their guy, which I thought was smart, very reflective of Joe Schoen. As good as the picks were in this draft, I thought Shane was even better as a GM, showing the Giants have had a lot of rigidity on the draft board in the last 15 years between Jerry Reese and Dave Gettleman, a bunch of 2 guys who didn't really like to move around. And you saw Joe Schoen, kind of the modern day, Harry Roseman philosophy of go get your guy and marry need and value and, get the quality players.
All right, taking a look at some of the notes in his scouting report. Of course, he's a 4-year starter. That helps. He's got good size and speed combo, 6'2", with a 4.35 40. Big and lengthy, with rare athleticism for his size. Aggressive in run support. On the downside, he can get a little physical at times and prone to holding and interference calls. That could be corrected. But the tools are there for a starting NFL corner. And yes, I don't think there's any question that of all the corners that were added in the first round, he had the most intriguing combination of size and speed. So we'll see.
I mean, it's a scheme fit pick, right? Because he's a press man corner, and that's what Wink Martindale wants to do, right? So, like, you could say, oh, somebody's a better, I don't know, Joey Porter's kind of a press man corner too. I don't know, maybe Gonzalez isn't. I can't remember. I've done so much on the draft and a lot. But if Gonzalez isn't a press man corner or Witherspoon isn't a press man corner, they might be better talented players. But if they're not going to play what Wink Martindale wants to play, well, then they're not really ideal fits. And Deonte Banks is a press man corner, and that's what the Giants want. So that's why he's a perfect fit.
The other two DBs they drafted in round 6, Trey Hawkins from ODU and Javaris Owens from Houston. Owens was, Hawkins was not considered a draft candidate, but once you get into the 6th round, anything is possible. All the GMs have all different opinions.
I think they like him as a special teamer, basically. I think they see a lot of what they look for is physicality, speed. I think they see him as a possible standout special teams player.
Now, what did you think, staying on defense here, do you think that if there's a hole, are we still looking at the middle linebacker spot as one of the holes on defense that still hasn't been fixed yet? Maybe that's something to get around to next year?
Inside line, the second inside linebacker, probably. I would have said a week ago, I would have said defensive tackle and cornerback were the two. And then they signed Ashawn Robinson to be their third defensive tackle, which is huge because Leonard Williams and Dexter Lawrence were playing way too many snaps. The drop off after those two guys was enormous. So Ashawn Robinson is a really nice pickup for them. And then they drafted Deonte Banks with the first round pick to slide in as the starter opposite of Dory Jackson. And now you feel much better about sliding Cordell Flott and Aaron Robinson and all these guys further down the depth chart. I guess I would say either safety, because I just don't know what you're going to get out of Bobby McCain. I know he's a veteran, but I just don't know if he's a starting caliber player. I guess that would be a concern. And because behind him, it's two young guys like Jason Pinnock and Dane Belton. And yes, I would say second inside linebacker, but teams spend so much time in nickel and dime nowadays that your second inside linebacker isn't always on the field.
And is there big expectations for Flott, the 3rd round pick last year? Are they hoping that he's going to have a much bigger role this year?
Yeah, I mean, they see him as an inside-outside guy. So, yeah, I mean, he'll challenge Deonte Banks to start, and then he'll challenge Darnay Holmes in the slot. I think he had moments. He was a little better last year, but his rookie year was kind of marred by an early season injury. So, yeah, I think that's a guy who could take big steps. That's a guy to keep an eye on in the preseason. He's a guy who can make jumps. Like at this point, you kind of feel like Rodarius Williams and Aaron Robinson. You kind of feel like the ship is heading out of the harbor on those guys. But Flott, it's only his 2nd year, so he's in a little different category.
And by the way, I should also ask your opinion on Beavers, because the inside linebacker, because Dave Syvertson, the lead scout at our lads, been doing a bunch of shows. We did when we were talking about the Giants' needs heading into the draft, we were talking about that inside linebacker spot, and he said that, I'd like to see a lot more from this kid Beavers when he comes back. Looked good early before the injury. Do you feel the same way, that he's somebody that could have a promising future?
He was climbing the depth chart in training camp before he tore his ACL. I think he got hurt in the first preseason game. Maybe it was the second. He was climbing the depth chart. He was the guy who was putting Blake Martinez on the hot seat before Blake Martinez, got cut / left the team and then ultimately retired after a week or two with the Raiders. Darian Beavers was the guy making Blake Martinez feel the pressure. So he certainly was a guy that they were high on last year as a rookie, but again, I got to see him move around after ACL surgery.
as the offseason eventually comes to an end here, do you expect is the Barkley situation, is that really the only key development that needs to be monitored by Giants fans? Like, don't expect anything else. Don't expect any other moves, major moves. No trades that will impact maybe some starting positions.
I mean, they have no salary cap right now, so they have like $500,000 of salary cap. So they'll have to readjust. They'll have to tweak some contracts, probably. I mean, whether that's, I guess they could already tweak Daniel Jones's contract or Leonard Williams' contract. There was a thought early in the offseason that Leonard Williams might get cut for salary cap savings. That's not going to happen. They could rework his contract and push more dead money into the future to open things up. That, I guess, that could happen. What we like to call salary cap gymnastics, that could happen. Trying to think what Dexter Lawrence, I think his extension will get done. We talked about the ballpark that'll be, and then Saquon Barkley's, yeah, really the only up in the air. I thought I had heard they were in the trade market last week. Again, that was before Ashawn Robinson and Deontay Banks. The trade market has probably died down for them a little bit. The thing was they had 10 picks in this year's draft. They didn't want to add 10 rookies. They ended up using the picks to trade up rather than to trade for veterans. So they end up picking 7 rookies, including, 3 guys who 6th, 7th round picks who might not even make the team. So they really only have to save 4 or 5 roster spots for this class. Yeah, I would say Saquon Barkley's the main focus of the Giants offseason from now until July 22nd.
Yeah, and the other player we did not mention was Jordan Riley, the defensive lineman from Oregon. So
it was really just a space. That's the old, there's only so many 338-pound human beings in the world. So just take a flyer on a guy who has massive size and see if you can develop him.
And then finally, special teams. And we know Gano, of course, the place kicker, but are they set with the other spots on special teams?
The Scottish Hammer, the punter, had a bad year last year. Jamie Gillen, he had a bad year last year. I don't think they brought in any competition. I guess his job at any moment they could, and his job could be up in the air. I mean, Graham Gano really doesn't have to kick a football from now to week 1, and he'll be an automatic on the roster top 5 kicker in the NFL. He's that good. I guess they never really have a returner. They have to try to sort out returner, I guess. Eric Gray's done some of that in his career. I guess that could be a spot where he makes an impact. But kickers totally settled. Long snappers totally settled with Casey Kreider, and punter. I don't think they have competition for Gillen, but they could bring it in at any moment.
Are you going to be working on anything specific? Anything more specific, like regarding the Giants and their draft with the Post?
Yeah. I mean, I'll have features and whatnot on some of these guys they just picked, but I'll be at rookie minicamp next week to see what these guys look like for the first time running around Friday and Saturday. And then after that, the whole team's together for OTAs. So we go from the draft to all 90 guys pretty quickly.
Yep, it goes by fast. It's off to a good start so far. And we'll look forward to talking to you again regarding the Giants when we preview training camp in a few months. I'm sure we'll talk before then. A lot of other NFL news going on to discuss. So, Ryan, appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me, guys.
You got it, Ryan.